My parents paid for my brother's wedding. The venue, the catering, the open bar, the live band. Even the custom ice sculpture with his fiancée's initials carved into it. When I asked my mom how much it all cost, she laughed and said, "Oh honey, we stopped counting after $60,000. $60,000. I was standing in my kitchen in Seattle when she said that. At that exact moment, I was eating pasta out of a bowl I bought at Target because I couldn't justify replacing my chipped plates. My name is Claire Donovan, I'm 34 years old, and I learned something very important at my brother's wedding. In my family, independence was a compliment, until it became an excuse. My brother's name is Matthew. Matt has always been what my dad calls a people person. Translation: charming, impulsive, terrible with money. Growing up in suburban Columbus, Ohio, we were raised with two very different expectations. Matt was sensitive. I was strong. Matt needed encouragement. I needed discipline. Matt forgot deadlines. I planned 3 months ahead. Somewhere along the way, that turned into a permanent narrative. He needed help. I would figure it out. When I was 18, I got into the University of Washington, out of state. I had partial scholarships, but not enough to cover everything. My dad sat me down at the dining room table and said, "If you want that school, you'll need to take responsibility." I nodded. It sounded reasonable, adult, fair. Matt, on the other hand, chose Ohio State. Closer, cheaper. Still my parents covered. His tuition gap, his apartment deposit, his car insurance, his spring break trip to Cancun, which was somehow already paid for. When I brought it up once, just once, my mom said, "Claire, you're better with money. Your brother isn't wired like you." Wired? Like he was built fragile, like I was built to absorb. Fast forward 10 years. I moved to Seattle after college, worked my way from a junior project coordinator to operations director at a logistics company. I didn't marry young, didn't buy a house early, didn't take big risks. I paid off my student loans at 31. Matt? He bounced between marketing jobs, then startups, then consulting. At 32, he met Ashley. She's sweet, truly, kind, energetic, Instagram perfect. Within 8 months, they were engaged. That's when the wedding planning started. At first, it was small talk. We're thinking fall. We love rustic venues. Her parents can't contribute much. Then one Sunday afternoon, my mom called me. "We've decided to help them." "How much?" I asked. "Oh, just some support." I should have known. In my family, some support has never meant some. The venue alone was $22,000. A restored barn outside Cincinnati, string lights, white roses, imported wine. My dad said it's once in a lifetime. I didn't say anything, because technically he wasn't wrong, but neither was this. So is financial stability. 2 weeks before the wedding, I flew home. At the rehearsal dinner, my dad gave a speech. He talked about Matt's big heart, about how proud he was of the man he'd become, about how family steps up for each other. I clapped, I smiled, I meant it. Mostly. But then he said something that lodged in my chest like a splinter. "We always knew Matthew just needed the right support to thrive." Support, the word echoed. Because when I needed support at 22, juggling 2 jobs and 17 credit hours, the word was independence. The wedding itself was stunning. Ashley cried walking down the aisle. Matt cried harder. My parents beamed. At the reception, I overheard my aunt whisper, "They're so generous to give them this start." A start. Interesting. Because when I started, it was with Sally Mae. 3 months later, my rent increased. Seattle is brutal like that. I called my mom casually one night. We were talking about nothing when she said, "Oh, by the way, your dad refinanced the house to cover some wedding expenses." I froze. "How much did you spend?" She hesitated. "Closer to 75. $75,000. I did the math automatically. That was my entire student loan balance. A 20% down payment on a $375,000 house, nearly 2 years of my net salary when I graduated. I swallowed. "That's a lot." "Well," she said lightly, "you've always been independent. We never worried about you." There it was, not cruel, not loud, just consistent. I didn't ask them for money, I never had. But something shifted in me that night. Because independence is empowering, until it becomes selective generosity. 6 months after the wedding, Matt called. "Hey, Claire, random question." Whenever someone starts with that, it's never random. "We're thinking about buying a house." "That's great." "Yeah, but the market's tough. Dad mentioned you've been investing." I felt my spine straighten. "I have." "Would you ever consider co-signing? Just temporarily." There it was again. Support. I took a breath. I'm not comfortable doing that. Pause. Oh. His tone changed slightly. Okay, no pressure. But there was pressure. It was quiet, but it was there that a week later my dad called. Your brother said you were hesitant. I said no. Why? Because no is a complete sentence, but I didn't say that. I've worked really hard for my financial stability. And we worked hard to give you both opportunities. Both. I almost laughed. Dad, I said carefully, you gave Matt $75,000 for a wedding. Silence. That's different. How? It was a celebration. So was buying a home. He sighed. You're looking at this transactionally. Yes, because it was a transaction, just not one I was invited to. That was the first real crack, the first time I felt the imbalance clearly instead of vaguely. But the real turning point came the following spring. When my mom called me crying and said we might need to stay with you for a while. When my mom said they might need to stay with me, I thought she meant a weekend. Maybe a plumbing issue. Maybe roof repairs. But her voice didn't sound temporary. It sounded scared. What's going on? I asked. She hesitated. I could hear my dad in the background. Then she said it. Your dad lost his contract. My dad had worked as an independent insurance broker for almost 15 years. Commission-based, no safety net except what he built himself. Or what he didn't build. How long has this been happening? I asked. Since January. It was April, 4 months. And you're just telling me now? We didn't want to worry you. That almost made me laugh. They never worried about me. Over the next week, the full picture came out. The refinance for the wedding had increased their monthly mortgage payment by nearly $1,200. The market shifted. 2 major clients left. They had dipped into retirement savings to bridge the gap. Bridge. That word again. Money in my family was always a bridge. But somehow I was never allowed to cross it. How bad is it? I asked my dad when he finally got on the phone. We're fine, he said immediately, which meant they weren't. We're just tight. Tight meant 2 maxed credit cards, a $40,000 HELOC balance, retirement account reduced by almost half, and no emergency fund left. I sat at my dining table in Seattle staring at my budget spreadsheet. I could help them, technically. I had savings, investments, a stable salary, but something inside me resisted. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. Have you talked to Matt? I asked carefully. Silence. He just bought the house, my mom said. Of course he did. 3 months earlier, my parents had helped with his down payment. I found that out accidentally when Ashley posted a grateful for our village caption under a photo of them holding house keys. My dad had transferred $25,000 on top of the wedding, on top of the refinance, on top of everything. So what are you asking? I said finally. We just need somewhere to stay for a few months, my mom said softly. Seattle, 1,000 miles away, leaving their house empty, leaving their problems paused. Why not stay with Matt? I asked. Another silence. They don't have the space, she said. 3-bedroom house, finished basement. But no space. I understood perfectly. Matt had just started his life. I was established. Independence had consequences. I flew home 2 weeks later. Not to offer them my guest room, but to look at the numbers myself. I sat at their kitchen table, the same one where I'd been told to take responsibility at 18. I opened their statements, line by line. It wasn't recklessness. It was imbalance. They had spent years pouring support into one direction and assumed the other direction didn't need water. Why didn't you save more? I asked gently. My dad looked defensive. We were helping your brother. Yes, I said. You were. He rubbed his forehead. He just needed more guidance. And I didn't? You were fine. There it was again. Fine, the most expensive compliment of my life. That night, I drove to Matt's house. He didn't know I was coming. Ashley opened the door, surprised, polite. The house was beautiful. New floors, updated kitchen, decorated carefully. It smelled like candles and fresh paint. Matt came into the living room smiling. Claire, what's up? I looked around. This was what support looked like when it landed. Stable, visible, solid. Our parents are struggling, I said. His smile faded. I know things are tight. Tight? I repeated. They might lose the house. That got his attention. He sat down slowly. Well, Dad said they had it handled. Handled. That word again. It's not handled, I said calmly. He swallowed. What do you want me to do? I didn't answer right away, because that was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Fairness? Reimbursement? Acknowledgement? I want you to understand something, I said finally. For years, they've told me I didn't need help, that I was independent, strong, responsible. He nodded slowly. They used that as a reason to invest in you instead. His jaw tightened. I didn't ask for that. I know. But you accepted it. That landed harder. I can't just give them money, he said quietly. You're their daughter, too. Yes, I replied. I am. And that was the problem. Because being their daughter had always meant different things depending on which child they were looking at. That night, I didn't promise anything. I went back to my parents' house, sat in my childhood bedroom, looked at old trophies, report cards, acceptance letters, proof of a pattern, proof that I had been capable, and proof that capability had become currency. The next morning, I made them an offer. Not emotional, not reactive, structured. I won't let you lose the house, I said calmly. They both looked up. But this is not a gift. My dad stiffened slightly. It's a loan, written agreement, clear repayment terms, and one condition. What condition? My mom asked. You stop pretending the past didn't happen. Silence filled the room. We need to talk about the imbalance. My dad looked uncomfortable. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time. For 2 hours we talked. About college, about rent, about the wedding, about the house down payment, about co-signing, about the narrative of independence. It wasn't explosive, it was quiet and uncomfortable. My mom cried once, my dad didn't. But he listened. Really listened. For the first time, I thought I was protecting you, he said eventually. By not helping me? I asked. By not making you dependent? I never wanted to be dependent, I replied. I wanted to be supported. That's the difference nobody names. Support isn't weakness. Selective support is damage. We signed the agreement that afternoon. $60,000. Structured repayment over 7 years. Interest at a modest rate enough to make it real. Matt transferred $10,000 the next week. Voluntarily. It wasn't equal. But it was something. They didn't move to Seattle, they stayed. They cut expenses. They adjusted. For the first time, my independence wasn't the solution. It was a boundary. A year passed. They didn't miss a payment. Not one. Something shifted in our dynamic. Subtle. But undeniable. My dad stopped saying I was strong. He started saying he was proud. It sounds small, it isn't. Matt and I started talking more. Not about money, about reality. He admitted something one night over the phone. I didn't realize how uneven it was. I know, I said. I thought that's just how families work. So did they. Ashley got pregnant that fall. At the baby shower, my mom pulled me aside. We're not funding everything this time, she whispered. I smiled. Growth doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like restraint. 2 years later, my parents sold their house, downsized, paid off the remaining loan balance early. At closing, my dad handed me the final check. He didn't make a speech. He just said, "Thank you for helping us responsibly." Responsibly, not selflessly, not sacrificially. Responsibly. That word meant more than he knew. At 36, I bought my own home in Seattle. No cosigner, no parental contribution, no resentment, just mine. When my mom visited for the first time, she walked through the living room slowly. "You did this on your own," she said. "Yes," I'd. Then I added gently, "But I didn't have to do it alone." She nodded because now she understood the difference. Here's what I learned. Independence is powerful, but it should never be used as a reason to withhold love. Support isn't about who needs it most. It's about who you're willing to show up for. For years, I was the child who didn't need help. Now I'm the daughter who sets terms, not out of revenge, out of balance. And balance feels a lot better than resentment ever did.